Hey guys, how's it going? I hope this video finds you well as always. Today we are going to be talking about viruses, specifically their structure. What are the different parts that make up a virus? Okay, just so that you understand what we're going to be talking about, three different things in the next few days. The first one is to be able to compare the structure of viruses to those of cells. So we have already talked about prokaryotes and eukaryotes. If you need to review some of those things, please go back to your notes and make sure that you understand the differences between those two types of cells. Now we're going to compare prokaryotes and eukaryotes to viruses. Okay. The next thing is to describe the viral reproduction. We're going to talk about that in the next day, and describe the role of viruses in causing diseases such as HIV. But just keep in mind, today we're only going to focus on the first one, which is to compare the structure of viruses to that of cells like prokaryotes and eukaryotes. Okay. The first thing is that you need to know that viruses are pathogens. Now, the word pathogen is very important for you to know, and that basically is any agent that is going to cause a disease. And viruses can actually affect any living organism, any living thing, such as plants, animals, fungi, and even bacteria can be affected by viruses. So they are really, really bad pathogens that cause diseases. If you remember a couple of years ago, maybe the Zika virus, when it was spreading out all throughout the United States and some, mostly the Africa and some parts of the United States, I'm sorry, it was very, very dangerous virus that was spreading out and causing diseases and causing deaths. This is actually a picture of it and what it looks like on their really, really powerful electron microscope. Okay, just keep in mind the viruses are pathogens. They cause diseases. The first thing is the definition of a virus. And here I have the viruses are non-living submicroscopic infectious agent that has an outside coat of protein around a core of DNA or RNA that can grow or multiply only, and that's important, only in living cells. And we're going to call those cells host cells, just like we call them in the case of parasitism. Okay, they're going to be called a host cells. Something that I do need to make sure that I emphasize here is understanding submicroscopic. So when something is microscopic, okay, you know that this means that it's very, very small. You have to only be able to look at it under the microscope. However, it is submicroscopic, which means that it's even smaller than microscopic. Okay, it's very, very, very tiny. And indeed, viruses are going to be even smaller than cells. Okay. Um, some of the characteristics that are important to remember about viruses are going to be the next five that you're going to see here. The very first one is that viruses are not cells. Okay, viruses are completely different from cells. The next thing is that they are non-living, which means we understand that cells are living organisms, yet viruses, they do not fall into any of that category. They are non-living things. They do have, however, for number three, DNA or RNA just like cells do. Um, it says here that RNA viruses are more unstable and mutate rapidly. When we learn about how they mutate, how they reproduce inside of cells, want to see what it is that they use in order to reproduce. But yes, viruses that use RNA instead of DNA can reproduce a lot more rapidly. Number four says they need a host cell to replicate, and a host cell can be any eukaryote or prokaryote. Okay, so long as the virus is able to attach to the cell and is able to deliver the DNA or the RNA into the cell, it is going to do that. So it doesn't matter whether it is a eukaryote or prokaryote. Right? The last one is that viruses are harmful. They're going to kill cells in replication, and they are pathogens which cause many diseases. Okay, so these are five different characteristics that you have to remember about viruses. Some more things that are important to know is that viruses do not grow, okay? Viruses do not require energy. They do not and cannot reproduce on their own, and they do not respond to their environment. And these are characteristics that most living things are not going to have. For example, anything that is living is going to be able to grow. Anything that is living has to be able to require energy, has to be able to reproduce, it has to be able to respond to its environment. And viruses don't do any of these things. Okay, so this is why we say that viruses are not considered living. So they cannot be destroyed by antibiotics. Okay, and antibiotics are these chemicals that we use to kill bacteria. Only bacteria can be destroyed or killed by antibiotics. However, viruses, they cannot be killed because obviously the non-living things, we cannot really kill them to start with. Yet we can prevent viruses, and we prevent them by using vaccines. Preventable, and make sure that we understand that viruses, the only way you can prevent it is by using vaccines. Okay? But antibiotics cannot be used for them. So if they're not alive, why does everyone want me dead? So yes, we do want viruses to be dead, but just keep in mind, we don't really kill them, we just tend to destroy them in the process. Three different structures that are important to keep in mind for viruses. Structure number one is basically that they're going to have genetic material. So right in the middle of the virus, and this is kind of like what some of these viruses look like, they're going to have DNA material. There's another picture, which is a little bit different. They're going to have RNA inside of them, and it happens just inside of that coat around them. The function of that DNA is to store, can I never say that word, hereditary information. There you go. Structure number two is the capsid, which is actually a protein coat. Okay, this is not a cell membrane. This is called a capsid, which is actually made of proteins. Like in here, excuse me, this is going to be made of different proteins that surrounds the DNA inside of it. So that's why we call them a capsid. It's a protein coat that surrounds the DNA or RNA. It's kind of like a membrane, but not like the cell membrane that we know. The function of that is to surround and protect the genetic material. And then last thing is that there are some projections or spikes like these right here, and those that are actually used to feel their specific environments and to stick to the cell membranes of cells when they're actually trying to reproduce. And we're going to see a video of that. But those right here, these are the three different structures. There's spikes or projections. Sometimes they call antigens too. This capsid membrane, which is a protein membrane, and then the last thing is the genetic material, which is inside of it. These are different pictures here, different viruses. This is actually a diagram of the virus that causes rabies, and you can see that it has all those spikes around it. These are all antibodies or antigens, I'm sorry, that are going to be attached to the host cell. You can see the DNA inside of it, and then there's the protein coat around it. So this is another picture of another virus. The influenza virus is another diagram. You can see the DNA inside, protein coat, and then some of those antigens around it. There's another virus here, animal virus structure. This is what they look like. So they're a little bit different from one another, but the most important part is to understand that they're all going to have those three parts. The capsid membrane is a protein membrane. Then you're going to have the DNA inside of that, and they're also going to have those little projections, okay, or antigens. Just a little check for understanding here. What can be found inside of a virus that is also found in cells? And remember, the video will stop and it's going to ask you that question. The next question is, what biomolecules is found inside the virus? So if that we find inside of viruses, well, no, you need to understand what biomolecule that is. And then viruses are unable to produce their own proteins from their protein code. What are viruses missing in order to be able to synthesize protein? Remember, synthesize means make. So if they cannot make their own proteins, what organelles are they missing? All right, so this right here is actually a picture of what it looks like under a microscope. Remember, this is very, very tiny. This is sub-microscopic. They have to use a really, really powerful microscope. But inside of it, you can actually see the DNA of the virus. You can see that protein code around it. And then the last thing is those antigens, those little projections that can actually attach to the host cell. Okay, that's kind of what it looks like under the microscope. Now what we're going to do is we're going to compare them to cells. And to do this, we are going to actually do it together as a class. So this is where I'm going to ask you to just skip forward, and we're going to do this as a class once the video is over. This is a diagram that we are actually going to complete. That way we can compare them to the viruses to the cells by using some of these different parts right here. And we're going to complete some of this in the C notes that we have. Okay. Some more check for understanding. We consider viruses to be non-living because they do not have all of the characteristics of life. What characteristics of life do viruses not have? Viruses cannot think about what can they not do on their own to answer this question. The next one says, which of the following cannot metabolize nutrients? Metabolize means to break down or to use nutrients. Which one would that be? Which of these does a virus need in order to multiply? If there's one thing that the virus needs to multiply, which one of those three would be? The next one, one characteristic shared by a virus and a living cell is that both, so that you answer that question. Viruses differ from bacteria in that all viruses, enzymes allow viruses to insert their genetic material into the host cell's DNA. The virus benefits from this action by, what do you think will be the best answer here? I think one of the last ones is, which of the following explains why antibiotics can treat flu-like symptoms caused by bacteria but are ineffective against the flu, the actual virus? Okay, we're gonna stop right here, guys. I'm gonna make another video for day 2, but for now, just make sure that you answer your summary on your summary section of the notes. And if you have any questions, just make sure that you let me know. Okay, guys, you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you again soon.